You've got questions, I've got answers. Fun fact, I totally ripped that off from an old Radio Shack slogan. That's going back a ways. Do y'all remember that? Also, fun fact, I used to work at Radio Shack. Those were times. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison here with the second installment of You Asked, because many of you have asked a lot of questions. And while I do my best to reply, there is just not enough time to get to all of them. But some of your questions are really good and commonly asked as well. So I figured let's answer questions in a video. Might help some folks out and have fun doing it. So keep an eye out on Digital Trends socials for posts we put out asking for your questions, and hit me up. And if your question doesn't get answered this week, maybe I'll get to it next week. And regardless, feel free to keep posting your question. The more I see it, the more likely I am to get to it. I'll do my best, okay? With that out of the way, let's get to our first question, which comes from @DragosMoldovan990, who writes, I'm in Europe, and the AV landscape is kind of different here. Any chance for you to get a look at Philips OLED TVs, for instance? I know they're not available in the States, but we simply have no good information sources here. Yeah, so I wanted to answer this question because I know that Philips TVs and Panasonic TVs in particular are of high interest because they tend to be really high performers. And I know a lot of folks would like to see how I would rank them against all the TVs that I do review. Unfortunately, as many of you know, Panasonic and Philips TVs, at least the premium Philips TVs available in the UK and Europe, are not available in the US. There was a time when I was asking the UK PR teams for these brands if they might consider sending those TVs for me. But as you can imagine, that's of significant expense to them. And they can see that the majority of our audience is here in the US. So it's hard for them to justify that expense. Likewise, it would be impossible for me to justify the expense of importing those TVs so I could review them here. The cost would be too substantial. And that goes for TVs in other markets too, like Australia and India, where I know a lot of you watching right now happen to live. Now, if we could arrange for me to travel to those places for a week and I did those reviews in those regions, that might be something, but that would have to be a viewer or brand sponsored thing, because I don't think I can convince Digital Trends to just fly me all over the world for doing TV reviews. I will say though that I'm thinking of going back to IFA in Berlin because I miss checking out the AV scene in at least that part of Europe, because I do know it is a bit different there and I like it. Next up is another international/regional question. And folks, I get this one all the time and I totally understand why. Joshua Mansill 9394 writes, you've talked about doing a video about this before, but why does Hisense and TCL release very different TVs with the same, very similar model number in the US versus Europe and Oceania? So you're right. I have talked about doing a video on this and I'm still planning on doing it. I'm using your question as an opportunity to ask folks to be a little patient with me here. As you've seen, we're in the middle of moving, so I've had to put some investigating on hold. I will give you a little bit of a nugget though here. The Hisense U8 and U7 series TVs that we get in the US are so good because reviewers like me have been on Hisense about improving this, tweaking that, and the powers that be, among them Hisense USA President David Gold, they pressed Hisense corporate to get those improvements for US models, betting that getting good reviews would help sell the TVs. And that bet paid off. The story is similar for TCL, which got amazing traction on the early 6 series TVs among reviewers, and they leaned into that hard and got sales success from it. So they leaned in even harder. Now, I can understand if the numbers show that those moves seem to work for the US market, but don't necessarily provide a return on investment in other regions. I don't know that is the case, but I throw that theory out there because while I could understand that, what I do not understand is why you would use the same model number in different regions, but not offer the same performance for that model number. That part right there is the bit I have not gotten to the bottom of yet. And I'm just a couple of phone calls away from getting the answers I need. So stay tuned. I will do that video this year, probably in October, honestly. So hold me to that. I'll do my absolute best. This next one is not for me personally, but I'm gonna get the answer for you. At Lord Tardar 4639 writes, just what is going on with AMD in the laptop sector, and why aren't we seeing any Zen 4 based laptops, not to be confused with Zen 3 and Zen 3 Plus processors that were just rebranded to 7XXX series halfway through the year, except in just a handful of mainly gaming laptops? So I don't know, but I know someone who does. So I asked Jacob Roach, who you have seen plenty of times on the channel, and his first response was, oh, this is a whole thing, which instantly made me chuckle because I could just hear him saying it. Anyway, he followed up with this response. If you're unfamiliar, AMD completely changed its naming scheme for its mobile processors with Ryzen 7000. Now, the architecture it uses is noted by the third number in the product. For example, a theoretical Ryzen 5 7510 would be using the Zen 1 architecture, despite the fact that it comes from the Ryzen 7000 series, which for the record is supposed to use Zen 4. That first number that most people associate with the generation of the processor now refers to the year it was released. It's confusing, and even more confusing when you consider this only applies to mobile processors. Anyway, to answer your question more directly, it's hard to say exactly why we haven't seen more Zen 4 processors in non-gaming laptops. There are a few, like the Acer Swift Edge 16 and Asus ZenBook S13, both with the Ryzen 7 7840U, but most non-gaming laptops are stuck on Zen 3. I suspect this just comes down to market share and positioning. AMD is focusing its most powerful, newest hotness on the area where it has more dominance, gaming laptops. Intel still holds the vast majority of the laptop market outside of gaming and the laptop market overall, so we may not see a ton of Zen 4 chips outside of gaming laptops. Definitely keep an eye out for the rest of the year though. Now that all the flagship chips are out, AMD has been slowly working its way down to the more power efficient chips in its lineup. Yeah, wow. So glad I asked Jacob on that one. Thank you, Jake, for coming through. And hey, if y'all would like to see Jake doing a Q&A series like this, let us know in the comments and we'll see if we can make that happen. Next up, and I think this will be the last one for today, I wanted to keep this one shorter, but let me actually ask you, do you like shorter, more frequent youasked videos or longer, slightly less frequent ones? Let me know in the comments. So many asks, I know, why am I so needy? Honestly, I just want to deliver what you guys like. Okay, two more questions actually, both on the same topic though. Fandibus asks, do you do professional calibrations? I'm in Oregon and would like to get my TV calibrated. Well, the short answer is no. I do not do professional calibrations. I'm sorry, I wish I could help you out. The reasons I don't do professional calibrations deserves a deeper explanation, which, let me ask you another question. If we did a live stream Q&A session every month, would y'all be into that? Hit this video with a like if yes. But the reason I don't do professional calibrations boils down to time and money. I am slammed all week long, and on the weekends, I'm completely booked with gigs. I'm a professional trumpet player, for those of you who didn't know. But in addition to the lack of time, there's also a significant cost involved with the equipment needed for a professional calibration. And while Digital Trends owns the equipment I need to do my job as a reviewer, I do not own the equipment needed for me to do my own calibration business. Anyway, this question leads us nicely to the next one, which comes from a lot of asks 430. I may have made that one up because I couldn't find the most recent question that was posted around this, but I get this question all the time and it's important I answer it. Anyway, the question usually goes something like, can you recommend a TV calibrator in my area? So I do not personally have a database of professional calibrators across the US, but honestly, I'm thinking of creating one. No, what I suggest you do is go to the Imaging Science Foundation website and click on the Dealers tab. I'll put a link down in the description so you can get there easily. There you can put in your city and state and find dealers in your area that probably offer calibration services. Honestly, I wish there was a slightly more refined way of finding ISF certified calibrators across the US, and maybe I'll work with the ISF to sort of retool their site to make it a little bit easier. But that's where I would start, at the Imaging Science Foundation website. Click on the Dealers tab. You can also try going to the AVS forum and posting a request for help finding a calibrator in your area. Somebody in there probably knows someone in your general area and can get you pointed in the right direction. Okay, so that's it for You Asked episode 2. Thanks for all your questions. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. And until then, here's 2 other videos I think you might like.